All right. Well, it's a little bit after 7. We're going to get started here. Welcome to everybody from the NEC here tonight. And some of you may have been on some of the calls on Thursday of last week, but cover a lot of the same information we talked about the other day. But first off, we're very happy to have Ben Show from the NEC with us tonight. Ben has been a big fan and a lot of help and a big supporter for what we do at United, and certainly helped me out a lot and a great deal in the first few years as a coordinator. And it's not a better guy to work with throughout the season and beyond, and we couldn't be happier to have him on our call tonight. So Ben, it's your show.
Good evening. I see a lot of friendly faces on here, so good evening. I was in the principal's office for a couple minutes before with the guys, so thank you for the intro. I don't usually get it like that, but the Super Bowl's over, so we can turn our attention to baseball. We'll get a little treat with the WBC here, and then but college baseball starts this weekend. Looks like most of the NEC schools start on the 17th, and then a couple after that. So the guys asked me just to come on and say hello, put a name with a face for some of the folks I haven't seen. A couple of things, just NEC specific wise. Let me just get my notes here. I won't be very long. We did lose Bryant and Mount St. Mary's. Bryant went to the America East, and Mount St. Mary's went to the MAC. We did pick up Stonehill College from the NE10. So basically, from a geography standpoint, Stonehill replaces Bryant, and then the conference has also formed a multi-year partnership with Coppin State, Norfolk State, Maryland Eastern Shore, and Dell State, specifically in the sport of baseball. Howard University and the NEC are now in a 6-team partnership. The swimmings, lacrosse, the golfs, I think, the soccers. I might be drawing a blank on something else, but this is by no means is the NEC putting the MEAC out of business. That is not the impetus for this. MEAC baseball only had 4 teams, and as most of you know, you need 6 teams to get the NCAA AQ. So it made too much sense from a geography standpoint. So it's definitely we're going to play a home and home with the MEAC schools at the very least in 23 and 24, and we'll see how it goes from that. So we're going to eliminate some of those home and home conference weekends, and we're just going to play it straight through, one single round all the way. So we're going to, whatever we are at, I think we were at 8, now we're up to 11, which makes the NEC pretty strong and gives us 30 conference games. All single games, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, all 9-inning games. And even if for all the cruddy weather that we will have some double headers, but those are all going to be 9-inning games as well. The coaches and I in the conference office love to put a couple housekeeping items in order. I know we discussed like what it's going to look like, getaway days and stuff like that. Timing and getaway days. It doesn't sound like any of our teams are going to fly to conference opponents, so I don't know if it's as necessary with flight deadlines and travel departures and whatnot. But we'll see how that goes, and we'll obviously tighten that up before conference play, which I think is March. Probably, I think we're a month out from conference play. I think with the 10 conference weekends, I think the first conference weekend is March 10, 11, and 12, I think.
Yeah.
Questions on that from anybody? No questions out of bounds? No? All right. So because we increased our number to 11, we're also going to increase the number of teams that qualify for the conference tournament. So we're going to increase that from 4 to 6. We're going to add an extra day to the conference tournament. We'll add Wednesday, so we'll play games on Wednesday and Thursday. The first 2 days, we'll play 3 games. We'll schedule those games at 11, 3, 30, and 7, I think, maybe. And that'll get us back on schedule for a double elimination all the way through. So that'll be new for us. And I know we're going to follow the Metro Atlantic, the MAC, the CAA, whatever their 6-team double elimination format is. We'll follow something very, very similar, which means that we'll instead of having 6 umpires for the conference tournament, we'll bring 8, and I'll leave it up to the guys to come up with the rotation for that as well. 4-man system all the way through, 6-man system for the finals. briefly covered. So we talked about the increase of the conference tournament teams. I talked about the increase in number of umps for the conference tournament. Briefly touched on the MEAC thing. And then we signed a 1-year agreement with Hudson Valley. Hudson Valley's AA for the Yankees. We made the move specifically to Hudson Valley because they have turf. So, those of you who have been with us the last couple of years, we've definitely run into some weather issues and a lot of standing water on all over, but especially in the outfield and in front of the dugout. So I wanted to go to a place with turf. So Hudson Valley has turf everywhere except for the mound and the plate. But I think that'll definitely help us get more games in, knock on wood. But you guys, those of you who have been there before know that we'll make sure we'll do everything we can to get those in. Because of the unionization of the minor leaguers, Hudson Valley does have to make some capital projects and facility enhancements to get up to par with whatever those unionization standards are. So when I visited them a couple of times in the off season, like Christmas time, December, they were literally going through some of the construction of what that was going to look like. So I don't know what the umpire room situation is going to be. The press box is not nearly as nice as Norwich, but we'll make sure that there are some suites available, and we'll make sure that you guys have all your logistical items covered. So I appreciate Chris and the guys for letting me come on and just give you guys an update. I just wanted you to hear it specifically from me. Like I said, the NEC is not putting the MEAC out of business by any sort. If I hear that rumor coming from this group, I'm going to, 1, deny it, and 2, give you all a slap on the wrist. That is not the case. It is strictly, the NEC's mission statement is providing opportunities in a lot of different ways. And the 4 MEAC schools being kind of in our geography made too much sense to not bring them in the sport of baseball. So that's it. That's my spiel. So the question, I'll leave the floor open for any kind of comments or questions or things I can do better or things the conference office can do better.
Well, you must have nailed it, Ben. We have nothing on the board here.
Good. I will say this though, from a logistics standpoint, there is one NEC core member who has done a terrible job of paying officials from the fall and the winter. We're trying to tighten this up as nicely as possible. I'm going to continue to try to tighten this up before we actually get to the spring. But please know that if you're hearing it through the grapevine, yes, it is true. There's 2 schools specifically. One of them is a non-baseball playing member. But I am working through the coordinators, and I've run this all the way up to the university comptroller to try to make some of the headway here. So if you are a little in arrears with payments from a particular school that will go unnamed for the time being, just let Chris and Alex know, and just know that Benjamin Show from the NEC office is working hard to tighten this up as quickly as we can. So probably makes it a little bit easier going to a flat fee all the way through. There is something in the chat here. Yeah.
Run rule.
Run rule. So it was discussed. We will not, as of right now, that's probably a housekeeping item. There did not seem to be any momentum from the NEC coaches to implement a run rule. So great question, but the short answer to your question is no, not in place at the moment. I don't think it's gonna. I would find it hard to believe that we would have it for conference play. Good question.
Anything else?
Awesome.
Yeah, we're not starting with the runner on second base for extra innings, right, Ben?
We are not.
Okay.
We are not. And I don't think any of our schools will, I don't think any of our facilities will have the pitch clock yet. I worked with a lot of administrators over the last couple of months about the specifics of this, but it doesn't look like any of our facilities will have pitch clocks, including, and we will not use the pitch clock in some of the minor league facilities. Like I think Maryland Eastern Shore, I think UMES plays some of their games in a minor league facility.
Wagner too.
Wagner. We will not implement the pitch clock regardless.
Okay. Good. Anything else while we have Ben? All right. Well, Ben, thank you.
Awesome.
And appreciate you being on here.
Yeah. Good luck. Stay warm in the first couple of weeks, and reach out to Chris and Alex. I'd rather have you reach out to them to get to me. at least in the beginning. And then if we have to, we'll loop you guys in on an email as we go further. So good luck, stay healthy. Keep that strike zone nice and wide and a little bit off. And I can say that. I don't know if the other guys will say that, but I can say
well,
that.
I mean, we can edit this, so we're good for now.
All right, then because it's recording, I'm going to show myself to the door. Thank you very much.
All right. Thanks again, Ben.
Adios.
Thanks, Ben.
All right. Before I really get into everything else, everyone, one thing I do want to say, and Ben didn't really touch on fees or anything. And Alex is going to talk about some of that stuff here in a second. But, the conference has made quite a commitment to you as umpires. And, it's due in part to all of your hard work and efforts out there. And obviously adding these new teams as well helped us. But, now it's time for us to, make a commitment like we always do to the conference. And for lack of better terms or a different way of putting it, let's make sure that we've earned that raise we've received. And, I have no doubt you guys will do the job on the field, but, we're very appreciative of the conference and Ben, all that he does and the work that they've done on the fees as well. So to start our agenda here for the night, uniforms, really simple. It's all the blank shirts, blank jackets, NEC hat for conference play. Midweeks, if you have a member of the crew that does not have an NEC hat, wear United hats. Either one's fine. Cold weather jackets. I know I mentioned this last week that, those 3 and 2 jackets that Keith has had at Stripes and Strikes are starting to run out. So, the next jacket that he will be selling will be the Smitty with the, the gray panels, similar to what we have already. If you own that cold weather jacket from 3 and 2, that is still the one to wear. Most of us really like those jackets. They're well made, they're warm. But moving forward, those Smitty ones with the gray panel will be the replacement. One thing to add to that is our base jackets, our convertibles are still the solid black. I know that a lot of you in Baltimore and other places have seen the new Smitties with the gray panels. They look great, but we're not looking to change the uniforms that we carry and what are acceptable on the field. So whether it's Adams, Majestic, Smitty, whatever the brand you wear, the acceptable convertible one will be the black only. Alex wants to talk a little bit about fees and a couple other things. Alex, over to you.
What's up, everybody? Great to see everybody. I don't have a ton to talk about on fees anymore in the NEC because we are just at 400 flat per game. So if you guys can't figure out what the fee is for a weekend series there, we got other problems. But so 400 a game. Ben touched on some of maybe one of the issues he's having with one of the schools. I'm not even aware of what school that is at this point. But just if we get to that, 21-day mark and you're checking in with a school to see, what's going on with payment, let's just keep that to one member of the crew. If the crew chief wants to be the winner of that, or if someone else on the crew wants to be designated, let's not hit them with 3 emails for one series. And it's my understanding right now, and Chris, maybe we'll get a clarification. I think Ben's still working through it. That's why I didn't ask him. But
yeah,
the 4 MEAC schools that used to pay through the MEAC office are kind of just exploring a little bit how they're going to take care of that. That used to all happen out of their conference office. So we're not sure if the NEC is going to facilitate that or if they're going to be looking to pay via their own offices or AP offices or whatever. So we will get you that info again, kind of at that 21-day mark. If you do want to check in with a school, just leave that to one person from the crew. Other than that, not really much on the fee front with the flat fee now. So back to you, Chris.
Yeah, that's one thing that Ben and I have spoke about a couple of times, trying to figure out with the 4 new schools what they're going to do payment wise, and I'm not sure that Ben has an answer as yet. I'm going to follow up with him on that and hope to have an answer quickly. I know we're about a month out from conference play, but there's other games being played as well, so we'll do our best to get you an answer on that one. Contacting schools, for conference and non-conference games, we really want our crew chiefs to be the ones that are reaching out. We don't really want to hammer these coaches or administrators with 3 or 4 different phone calls from all members of a crew. So, for a weekend series, let's try to have the crew chief reach out on Tuesday or Wednesday just to confirm times, dates, all that stuff. Whether if it's going to be an issue as well. Midweeks, day before is fine. Same thing, just the crew chief. And you all know that the crew chiefs are highlighted in the arbiter. I actually have to go back, and I'm not sure if I mentioned this the other day. I have to go back and just double check on all the crew chief assignments. I think some of the orders have been mixed up as we started to make some changes early on. So one thing that I'll do in the next few days is just confirm all that, but just make sure it's just the crew chief reaching out. If a crew has a change, a time change for a weekend, whether it's moving up an hour, back an hour, it's not necessarily that we hear from the crew chief to tell us that you guys are now going to play at 11 a.m. instead of noon. As long as, you guys are on the same page, you let us know. It may not be made a change may not be made in the arbiter. It's not the biggest deal in the world. We just want to make sure you're all on the same page. So, for lack of better terms, don't freak out if the change from noon to 11 isn't in the arbiter. As long as we know and the teams and the umpire crew knows, we're fine with that. I want to talk a little bit about evaluations, and I think I've gotten away a little bit from really asking the crew chiefs to submit an evaluation for the weekend. I know at one point it was more or less just the scores, who won, no issues. Which, believe me, I want every weekend to go that way. I'd love to get all emails on weekends saying, hey, no issues, no problems here. But, at the end of the day, it doesn't really give myself, Alex, John, the information we really need if we're not on site. So crew chiefs at the end of the weekend, please do your best by Monday morning just to send a brief overview of how things went, how the crew performed, including yourself, just to give us an idea of really, a big picture of how things went. And then also as a crew chief, follow up with a peer evaluation. It's funny, John and I were talking to Alex before the start of this meeting about, the evaluation process and if there was any changes we could make in the arbiter to, either change in title or the process. But I think what we've settled on is, we're going to keep the peer evaluations in there. It's a great tool. It's just one more layer of evaluations that we get. It's very helpful not only in the spring, but in the summer as well. And speaking of that, we really want everyone to get back to trying to do their best to fill out these peer evaluations. Make sure it's not personal, just a really objective view of how your partners did throughout the game is what we're looking for. Now, are we going to hound you and call you and email you every time if you haven't done it? No. I mean, we're all busy. I don't know that we have the time to do that. But if we could just make a concerted effort here to really do our best to submit these things, it is helpful for what the three of us are trying to do throughout the season. Pre-games. I think it's really important, really anytime, but specifically this year with all the rule changes and also the timing issues that, especially early on here, that we're going to have to really enforce and I think coach and help some of these teams and players through, that we spend the adequate amount of time doing a good pregame. And we have some tools that between Alex, John, and myself that we're going to take a look at here. I know Brian DeBrouwer's put together some good information that we're going to review and get out to all of you. I think it's a really good template to work off of in the locker room prior, and also maybe even something to have on the field as a card, as a reminder with some of these timing issues at the beginning of the season, something you could refer to. So, in addition to that, we have to make sure that we're arriving on site in the adequate amount of time to make sure we have enough time to discuss all this stuff. So, let's just make sure that we're there an hour before at a minimum. Maybe on a conference weekend, we're looking more like an hour and 15, just to make sure we're all on the same page here. We're prepared with all these new timing issues and rule changes that we're going to have to deal with this season. And just commit to being on time and really, making sure we're prepared to get on the field. I've been in plenty of locker rooms when I was on the field, and I get it. You haven't seen some of your buddies in a while. You're excited to be on the field with them. And there's a good portion of time where you guys are just kind of talking, reminiscing, joking around. But I think we've all been in situations where we've kind of looked at the clock and said, oh boy, I guess it's time to get ready now. Let's just recommit to having really good pre-games and know the significance and importance behind that. Timing devices, I don't know what John's feeling is on this, but I could really care less if you use a stopwatch or the Ref Smart. I think you guys have seen or maybe received some emails about getting those reprogrammed or purchasing a new one with the 10 seconds on there. Personally, I guess I'm more old school. I would really go with the stopwatch, and I think it's more visible. I think there's some reasons why you should or should not use one or the other, but let's just make sure that we're using them. We're visible. And, a lot of the things that were talked about in Baltimore and the other clinics is just making sure that we're being good coaches. We're helping the players and coaches get through this stuff, especially early on, because for all the conversations that Alex, John, and I have had with conferences and coaches, I mean, there's still a large number of them that we haven't spoken to or we haven't heard from. So, I think there's going to be some growing pains with this, but it's our job to just kind of be the ones to help them through it and communicate effectively and, like we really do all the time, but even more so this early part of the season. Visible clocks. I think Ben just touched on it on the NEC front. We're going to have some unique challenges, I think, in the future, and maybe even some points this year with teams that do have visible clocks. My advice to the umpire crew is if there's a visible clock, it's in use, we need to have our timing devices with us, because I think the problem is we don't know who's going to be running those clocks. If we're lucky enough to have the technology to have them, in our pockets and time them and start and stop them ourselves, it's great. But I think the reality is, we're going to have some interns, some people for the universities that are potentially working a baseball game and then maybe a soccer game. And I don't think we're going to have consistent people working baseball games every day and every weekend. So my advice is, once again, bring a stopwatch or the Ref Smart out with you, monitor it, see what times, if they're accurate. And we may find ourselves in some situations where, quite honestly, we might have to take over. I don't think we're going to run into that too much this year, but if we do, we need to be prepared for it. Next thing I want to discuss is getting together as crew members on the field. And I think we had seen in Baltimore in our clinics, there's a little bit of expanded times where we can get together. One that was mentioned was, a hit by pitch situation where the crew can get together. And honestly, we've been doing this for a few years now, so that's not really anything new. But I think one thing that I want to take a look at a little bit here is when it comes to unsportsmanlike situations. And, I'm not going to dive into all those now, and we're going to have a staff meeting in a couple of days and, other times where we can discuss these things. But the one thing that I want to bring up now is, whenever we have potentially a throwing incident, something unsportsmanlike, I think that there's many cases and times where we've gotten into a locker room after a game. And I know I've been, it's happened to me a few times where, as we discuss these plays after a game, one of us in the locker room will say, you know what, I think we should have handled this differently. Or, I saw this and I thought maybe we should have done that. What I really want to avoid here is to make sure that if we have those thoughts in our head on the field, then we get together as a crew. Now, that being said, I do not want to take away any of the responsibilities of a plate umpire when it comes to a throwing incident, any unsportsmanlike, that umpire. And I, as I look at the faces and names on this call, I think that everybody on this call is qualified enough to handle these situations. That's why you've been assigned these games. But once again, what I do want to avoid here is a situation where something could have been handled a little bit better and somebody has knowledge on the field or has a different opinion, and we should talk about that. So I'm kind of expanding our crew consultations to unsportsmanlike situations as well. And I think it's very similar to what we're seeing a lot of times in Major League Baseball games. However, they may meet before they make a decision. Once again, I don't want to take that decision-making process away from the plate umpire, but as a crew, if we think we're missing something or somebody thinks that, then we should talk about it. Moving on to the next topic, let's make sure that we're following the coach discussion, the protocol that's been laid out by the NCAA here. Discussions on the field when there's a play on the bases. Let's make sure that we direct our coaches to the 45-foot lines. And, the next piece of this is make sure that we go there too. If we ask them to do the right thing here, we have to make sure that we follow through as well. And any plays that may occur or discussions around the home plate area, make sure that we direct those coaches to just keep them out of the dirt area. This is something that's been in place for a couple of years, and I'll admit that, not something we really enforced as well as we should have. But at the end of the day, whether it's just because of the origin of this being the COVID protocols, it's here to stay. It's not going away. And I think in many cases, this gives us some time to decompress, get our thoughts together, maybe de-escalate the situation. I think on both sides. And I think what it'll do is it'll end up creating some more meaningful conversations and possibly a situation where, this discussion will be less emotionally charged and we can actually, explain ourselves and have coaches explain themselves and have this be more of a beneficial conversation rather than the butting of heads that sometimes happen in a baseball game. So once again, let's make sure we follow that protocol. And I think this is a situation where I think we're going to have to coach the coaches a bit and direct them on the field. And there are going to be times when we forget and they're going to forget too. So I think that both sides are going to have to get used to this a little bit more. But let's do the right thing and follow the protocol. The ejection process, nothing has changed here. I think we're all very aware of what we have to do when ejection happens. Ben mentioned, the format, 3 9-inning games, 3 days. There's times we may have to double up on games because of weather. But, if we have an ejection on the field, we just have to make sure that a phone call goes to one of us right away. Okay. We'll have a CAA call next and John will go through that procedure. But, if it's the NEC, phone call goes to me directly. And if for some reason I don't pick up, you can reach out to Alex. But, I find it very rare that I won't have the phone or be able to pick up. So, we have to be alerted if there's an ejection. We have to know what's going on. And if it's in between games of a doubleheader, a simple phone call to say, hey, we're getting ready for game 2, but I just want to let you know that, this is what happened and this person was ejected. We've talked about this many times. The last thing we want to do is be in a situation where we're kind of blindsided by an ejection. At a minimum, if Ben were to call me or somebody else from the conference or a coach or an administrator from one of the teams, I want to be able to have the answer that, yes, I've spoken with the crew. This is what happened, or yes, I've spoken with the crew. And, I'm looking to get more answers. Having the answer that, no, I haven't heard about this yet, let me get back to you, is not one that is acceptable. And quite honestly, if there's going to be a little bit of maybe a more pointed conversation for me, it's going to be this situation where we just, we're not prepared to adjust and have answers for people. So once again, nothing new. Just make sure if you have an ejection, you reach out to us right away. Last thing I want to touch on before I turn over to Alex for a couple minutes, plate dodging. Another thing we've talked about many times here. This should be no surprise. The only way you're going to be sharp on the plate is to work plates. And if you're going to work one plate during the weekend, once again, looking at the names and faces on this call, there's very few of you that are only working a couple of games for us. You will have plenty of opportunities to work games during the week. Make sure you're doing that. For some of the newer umpires, the NEC or Division I baseball, if they tell you they want the plate and they want to go out there and get their feet wet and prove what they can do to you, then by all means allow them to. But what we can't have is, and there's one more thing that Alex, John, and I get really annoyed when we hear, is that guys are just not working plates, or a email or a call saying that I've worked X amount of plates in a row. It's not something we want to deal with. We're so busy that these are the things that when they come across our desk that kind of get under our skin. So the simple message is just do the right thing, work plates, get better each and every time you go out there, and passing them off to other people or thinking that you've gotten to a point in your career where you don't have to work a plate. That's simply not the case. So do the right thing. All right, I'm going to hand it off to Alex here for a couple of minutes to talk about some RefQuest issues and everything else.
Cool. Thanks, Chris. Couple things here, just for everyone. Remember, we're in terms of the NEC schools now. Reach out to Chris and I with givebacks, turnbacks, changes, anything that you need to do. Certainly we work together with the MAC office, and many of you are probably used to, especially on those 4 MEAC schools, maybe reaching out to Chris Williams or John, but just get those communications to Chris and I directly, so we can get them updated as quickly as we need to. Just because of our geography in general, we've all worked everywhere from junior college all the way through Division I, and many of you on this call are going to work Division III games. You're going to work JUCO games. You're going to work D2 games for other assigners. And just remember, in the time you're out there, you all are the leaders, and the examples that you all set are going to be the ones that our newer umpires and our umpires looking to get to D1 follow. So if they see us showing up a half hour before the game, or they see a certain way that a more experienced umpire handles a coach or a situation, those are the examples people are going to follow. So certainly think about that as you make decisions and work through your midweek games at other levels. While you might be a 2 or a 3 in a D1 series, you turn around and you're a 1 in the NESCAC or in the SUNYAC or in a junior college conference. So just keep that in mind as you're out there, and do your best to represent MAC and UCU the absolute best you can, and help our newer crop along the way. Just on a housekeeping note, we'll do the CAA call here in a few minutes, but then Thursday evening, February 16th, 8 p.m. Eastern, we will have the kind of all-encompassing conference call, which will be everybody from MAC and UCU. So we did these small conference calls for the conference umpires at the D1 level, but then we will expect, if you can make it, for everyone to be on Thursday night for kind of the big one. So we hope to see you then. Last but not least, just Arbiter versus RefQuest versus how all that's going to work. So as all of you can see from your schedules, we are still scheduling everything in Arbiter. We are not doing any physical scheduling in RefQuest. That being said, I think we all know that the NCAA portal as well as a United portal are in RefQuest. So when you log in to your RefQuest account here, this is what the NCAA portal looks like. And for those of you who are registered and those who work in the NEC, we will want you to be a part of the United Umpires portal as well. So if you go on to Arbiter, or I'm sorry, if you go on to RefQuest, I'm really going to confuse someone now. If you go on to RefQuest, what you'll see is NCAA baseball. And hopefully if you've gone ahead and registered, you'll see a United Umpires tab as well. And if you don't have both of those and you're working in the NEC, just shoot me an email and we'll get you all set up and in the right direction. I know quite a few people registered for the NCAA but forgot to register for United. So again, just shoot me an email. I'll get you pointed in the right direction. But I know I've fielded the question, how do I know if I have both? Well, this is exactly how you know. You'll see both titles here. And then if you have other groups in RefQuest, you'll see them right next to that one as well. So that's really all I have. I will turn it back over to Chris. I hope everyone has a great start to the season, and I'm looking forward to seeing you all out on the road here shortly.
Thanks, Alex. One thing to touch on briefly as far as RefQuest goes, I think everyone, please do me a favor, and John, Alex, a favor. Go in and take a look at your eligibility requirements for RefQuest. I received quite a few emails today for umpires that were in Baltimore or maybe one of the other 4 sites. And there's some scan issues that appeared, I think, just for the Baltimore clinic. But now in speaking with some other coordinators across the country, this is happening more and more in some of the other sites as well. So some umpires have had a situation where they had a green check mark for their clinic attendance is now disappeared. and shows up that they're not getting credit for that. I know I sent a text out today through RefQuest to everybody just to, to kind of answer that question. At this point, there hasn't been a whole lot of direction from the NCAA. However, I think I know the text told everyone not to send us an email. At this point, what I would say is if you're in a situation where you don't have credit, it's turned from a green to a red, or it's red for some reason. You were there and just did not receive the credit. Send an email to George Drocius, copy John, Alex, and myself so we know. I think it's pretty simple for the people in Baltimore. I saw just about everybody, or I tried to do my best to make sure that I saw everyone there. This is an issue that, we're trying to deal with on our end, but at the end of the day, if you send us an email, we're just going to forward it to George and the NCAA anyway. So I know I told everyone to hold off earlier today, but at this point, if you're in that situation, send an email to George and the NCAA, copy us, and we'll see if we can clear this up. I think with anything that's new, there's some bugs in the system here they're trying to work through, and certainly the last thing we want is for any of you to be freaked out or nervous about not being there and not getting credit for it. So if you run into that situation, please just go through that process and we'll try to figure it out. Briefly, I'm just looking at the chat here and taking a look to see if there's anything that wasn't answered before we turn it over to John and move into the CAA portion of things. DeAndre has something here about the sizes of bases. Yeah, there may be situations in some of these minor league parks, and I know that Wagner has the larger bases in there. Let us work through that. If it's a situation where the 18-inch bases are there, obviously we'll deal with it. But I also think that if they have 15-inch bases and are able to use them, then we're going to do our best to make sure those actually end up in the ground. So, let us work through that. And if you guys go to any of these sites in the NEC and we're having that issue, certainly reach out to me and let me know. Other than that, I don't think that we have anything else here in the NEC portion. So for everybody who was on here for the NEC, thanks for spending some time with us tonight, and we appreciate all that you guys do. If you have any issues or questions, after this meeting, something you didn't bring up in the chat, reach out to me, send me an email, shoot me a text or a call. We're good with that. And one thing we don't do very often is thank you all for all that you do. So, we're right around the corner from the start of the season, and, just want to let you know that we appreciate all your efforts and everything you do, and looking forward to seeing all of you out there this season. So at this point, we are done with the NEC portion, and in a minute or two, we're going to turn over to John for the CAA. So thank you to all. Good night, everyone.